Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the question box for Friday, the 3rd of September, 2021. I'm one of your hosts, Shane Bailey. The question box is your weekly gaming talk show right here on twitch.tv/magic_cast. Every week, I'm joined by one good friend from the Australian and New Zealand games industry to detail, dissect, and discuss the latest news, topics, and trends from the industry that we love so very much. This week, I'm very excited to be joined by a friend who I haven't seen in real life in almost about probably exactly 3 years. And that is, he is Ben Salter, senior editor at Stevivor. Ben, so happy to have you on the show. How are you?
Good to be here, Shane. I'm great. We're not in lockdown in Adelaide, so I have a relatively normal life. And whenever I do anything like this, people are like, "Oh, that's right. You're one of those people who are somewhat normal." So my apologies if I mention anything kind of like, going outside. Uh, yeah.
No,
How
that's
are
all right. You'll
you?
just see my ears flare up. Yeah,
Yeah.
they should rename South Australia to Safe Australia. I think that's how this should work
Yeah,
at this
that's it at
point.
the moment.
Uh,
But anyhow,
I'm well, mate. I'm well. Yeah, we just got done talking about all the fantastic games we're playing, and yeah, it's so many great releases recently, and some fun news to talk about as well, which is why we are here. Like I said at
mm,
the top of the show, the Question Box, your weekly gaming talk show. In the first half of the show, we will be talking the top three biggest news stories from the week in games, and then in the latter half of the show, we will be diving into the question time, where we put into question one big theme or topic to really dig into and dissect. Before we get into that, though, Ben, please introduce yourself to the audience and tell them all about the fantastic work you do over at Stevivor.
yeah, so I'm senior editor at Stevivor. You had, or I should say Stevivor, just to really annoy Steve, who you had on a couple of weeks ago. It's a common gripe of his. So I really love doing that. I've actually gone on brand. Like I don't wear this on our own
I
podcast, but
noticed,
like
bravo.
here I
Yeah,
am in a live stream with my, proper merch on. So yeah, I've been there for like 4 or 5 years now. The site's grown pretty well. I would say it's one of the bigger sites in Australia now. Um, but yeah, I've been around games media for a lot longer than that. I actually did it for a full-time job for like 4 or 5 years, and part-time before that. So I was one of those weird people who got paid to play games, according to my mum, basically.
so she
Um,
told all her friends, right?
yeah, so
Yeah.
I moved to Melbourne when I was 20 to do that, and she was just like, "Oh yeah, Ben plays games, I think, and like a computer's involved and the internet's involved." And then I'd like go to a press trip or go to E3 or something, and she's like, "Oh yeah, he's playing a game in America or something." I don't really know, and she still doesn't know. Like, I've tried to explain it to her. I've shown her stuff I've written, and she's just like, "That's nice." Um, but she was very supportive. I don't mean to put her down like that, but she didn't get it at all. Uh, but yeah, there was a time when you could be a paid games journalist in Australia. Very fortunate to do that for a while. Not so common these days, unfortunately. So yeah, now I have a different job and I just work with Survivor now and again, and yeah, really enjoy it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've just
Mm.
linked Stevivor in the chat. Like you mentioned, we had Steve Wright himself on the show a few episodes ago. Highly encourage you go check out Stevivor for all your games, news, reviews, and general coverage as well. I will definitely plug a fantastic interview that Steve has done with Johnny Galvatron, who's the creative
Mm.
director on a new Australian game dropping onto Xbox and Xbox Game Pass very soon, and that is the Artful Escape one that I've been looking forward to for many years, ever since I think it debuted way back at E3 2017. So, yeah,
Yeah,
great interview. Go check that out and check out all the great content on Stevivor as well, and yeah, see all the fantastic work that Ben does there, including the
that's
Friendly
it.
Fire Show as well, a great podcast that
Yeah,
I tune into frequently.
that interview is also in the most recent episode of the Friendly Fire Show. So 182 that was published yesterday. You can listen to that there. We blabber on for a little bit first, and then Steve takes over with a pretty good interview. So check that out on pretty much every app, I think. I listen on Spotify, but it's on everything, I think.
Nice. Have you tried the Artful Escape yet?
Not yet. So I've just heard Steve basically gush over it, how it's his favorite game ever. So I'm looking forward to checking it out.
No, same here. Anyway, let's dive into the top three. Are you ready, Ben?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Cool. We start off with a pretty serious one that I was a tiny bit hesitant to cover just because I am no expert in this area, but it
Mm.
is undoubtedly probably the biggest story in the industry this week. So fitting for the top three, I might say, and that is China. China's gaming restrictions aren't as anti-gaming as you think. This is an article actually on Kotaku by Cici Zhang, following Chinese regulations that now prohibit young gamers from playing more than 1 hour per like on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, so mostly the weekend. Let me click over to the overlay here so everyone can enjoy it. I'll get down to this paragraph here where CC says, starting from September 1st, players under 18 years of age are restricted to 1 hour of gaming a day on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and public holidays. The restrictions imposed on players don't come from a law. It's an industry regulation recently passed by the National Press and Publication Administration, or NPPA. As a parallel example, imagine that you're an American company that wants to dump radioactive waste into a lake, and the EPA said that you can't do that. Regulations are specific rather than broadly applied to a populace. The NPPA is a government regulatory branch that oversees print, online, and broadcast media more broadly, but has sole purview over digital games. Under the regulations, gaming companies are tasked with preventing minors from accessing their games during certain times, and to boot players after they run out of their allotted time. Jintong Zhu, a publishing manager at a Chinese gaming company, told Kotaku that Chinese games have previously been restricted to to an hour and a half on weekdays and 3 hours on weekends and holidays. So tightening of restrictions here. So the latest mandate is an extreme tightening of government regulations that have already existed since 2019. Why do these rules exist? While it might be tempting to generalize the Chinese government as inherently regulatory, it's important to consider that the gaming landscape in China is very different than in North America and Europe. Daniel Ahmad of Nico Partners told Kotaku that around 92 to 95% of the games made in China are based on a free-to-play model. So while most Kotaku readers might think of first-party titles or self-contained indie games as what, quote, video games are, most Chinese players will probably think of free-to-play online free multiplayer online battle arena MOBA game like Honor of Kings or gotcha game like Genshin Impact. Ben, yeah, so this one, I had that initial reaction that I think most people did, not being aware that those previous restrictions of an hour and a half and 3 hour on the weekend limits existed. When you saw this story, what were your first reactions?
I think it's a classic commenters who have just read the headline and gone off, basically, for that reason. Like, I didn't realize there were already restrictions. And I think a lot of people just kind of saw China restricts children's gaming hours and thought that's outrageous, classic China, you know. But yeah, I think that line that you read there about gaming being very different to what it is in the US and Europe is probably the key there, because as they say, when you think games, the first thing that jumps to mind is probably a big AAA game, something that you buy and you invest that money in there. While free to play is a pretty big thing, it's not the be all and end all, which it kind of sounds like it is in China. And so one of the main faults here, or the things they're trying to avoid, is that addiction and that gambling level of loot boxes and that kind of dragging you in to keep playing more. That is an issue for free to play games. And that's not the whole story, but it certainly seems to be a big part of why they're more worried about it than perhaps we are here.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, that was my first reaction. Important to note, like, this is just for under 18s, right? So I'm not sure of any restrictions imposed on Chinese adults, or across any type of games, whether they be free to play or not. Given my background at Ubisoft, one of the first sort of points that jump to my mind is the kind of impact that this might have on the esports industry. You know, Chinese esports sort of teams and industry. Jason, thanks so much for subscribing. That's the first time I've seen this alert pop up, and it's from Finding Nemo.
Wow.
So it really threw me off. I'm like, why do I have Bruce from Finding Nemo in my ear right now? So thank you, Jason. Really appreciate it. What was I saying? Esports. Yeah. So obviously China, a huge market for esports. They produce some of the highest performing teams in the world across a variety of games, including League of Legends. And that was my first sort of instinct, like, oh, what's going to happen now to all these young, Chinese video game fans who want to be the best in their country and the best in the world, and how is that going to impact them? Seemingly, they're already doing really well with those previous restrictions on them as well. So maybe this gives them a slight handicap. But when you think of esports, Ben, in China, do you think this has any kind of dramatic impact?
Probably not, but potentially. I think there's no way you can definitely enforce this. I know they're going to try to do it on minor accounts, and they're going to leave it up to the game developers to have to apply that if your account is flagged as being under 18. But there's nothing stopping your parents saying, "Here, use my account." So if there was some kid who was like, "I'm going to be an esports whiz, give me the access," I think a parent would allow it, or they're not going to support it anyway. Like, they're going to kind of say, "No, you're not doing that," either way. So there are ways around it. But yeah, in terms of that, it's probably the same like if you apply it to regular sports. Like, if someone didn't have any access to it, they're not going to get into it. A little bit different because you don't really restrict your child saying you get an hour a day at basketball and that's it. But maybe you do. I don't know.
Who
Uh,
knows?
so yeah, I don't remember that happening, but maybe it did. I guess PE lessons were like an hour or something, weren't they? So yeah, you could still be a star. Um, yeah, I don't think so. If they're already on that path, I think they'll find a way around it. But yeah, it might reduce like interactive, just kind of viewership and all that type of stuff. So yeah, that's probably the bigger worry, I'd say.
Yeah, I just want to quickly read further down in the Kotaku article. CC notes China's lucrative $360 million esports industry poses another complication to a clear cut anti gaming narrative. According to Zhu, regional governments like the city of Shanghai are very supportive of both the esports and game development industries. For a company like MiHoYo, which ranked 88th among all Shanghainese companies in terms of income, its tax contribution is an important part of the local economy. At the national level, the Ministry of Education started categorizing esports management as an official major in 2016. So yeah, really, esports
Mm.
really important to the Chinese economy, and you'd have to assume that the regulatory body has thought about this decision and how it might impact the local economy in that sense as well. So
Yeah.
what we're seeing right now on screen is just the opening ceremony for League of Legends Worlds back in 2020, which is just nuts, absolutely nuts. So seemingly doing really well for them. I'm not sure there were any other points around that. The only other question that I wanted to pose, Ben, and yeah, something we can just sort of speculate on here is obviously big Western and even Japanese publishers across the video games industry see China as a huge opportunity for them. The
Yeah.
article from Kotaku noted that typically we don't see many huge I suppose Western developed games of the traditional AAA sense find massive success in China if they're not like maybe they're not even allowed in at all. I know that Ubisoft in particular has been doing a lot of work to make Rainbow Six Siege playable in a way that's acceptable to the regulatory body there as well. But when you see like these restrictions in place, particularly for the younger demographic, do you think it impacts their, I suppose, appetite to even attempt to get in at this point? I mean, they noted that I think it's more than like 700 million gamers
Yeah.
in China, which is just giant. When it's like even bigger when then combining the US and the UK markets and even some European countries as well. But when you see like such harsh restrictions on them, do you think it impacts their desire to even attempt to get into the market?
Probably not because they're trying now. Like, so basically, there's been no Western consoles in China until very recently. I don't even know if they're in there yet, but certainly Xbox is trying really hard and PlayStation to get in there. They haven't been allowed to sell consoles since 2000. If anyone listening isn't aware of that, it's actually quite interesting. Definitely worth a Google, the whole situation in China. And that's how you got things like, I don't know if you remember the IQ, which was an N64 controller,
I
which
don't
had
know.
games preloaded on it. So it was just a controller. I think it came out like 2005 or something into China. And like by then, you could put like 10 games just in a controller, plug it into a TV. And that was allowed to be released in China because Nintendo partnered with a Chinese company to release it. It wasn't called Nintendo, wasn't called 64, it was called some other company, IQ. It had
Mm.
like Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, all that stuff on there. I think it was 10-ish games. And that's how they got a release there. They did it with the GameCube as well, I think. So they had to release different versions of consoles, which showed they did have an appetite to do it, but it was hard work and ultimately not that lucrative because they couldn't release more games for it. Weird sidebar, they released the same thing for like hotels in America. Like you could just play the controller and then you could like rent games for a night. I don't think that happens anymore. People would just play on their phone, but like I don't think that happened here ever. But yeah, like a weird thing Nintendo tried to get into. I don't think anyone else ever tried that. So it was like, yeah, a strange time, but they made it work. So I think the Switch has been released in China. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Or
I'm not
they've
sure on the
tried.
Switch, but I know PlayStation definitely had a presence not too long
Mm,
ago at China Joy. So whether
yeah.
which is a huge Chinese gaming event, so whether they have launched there or are about to, I'm not entirely sure. But no, I think I tend to agree with you on this point. Even though these restrictions do exist, it's still a massive market. So
Yeah.
the consumer spend is there, and it's probably like a higher ratio to spend per hour, I suppose, to most other territories as well, right? And I think you even see companies like Xbox attempt Halo Online, which I think was released in Korea first and foremost, because online
Yeah.
shooters over there, free to play shooters in particular, were
Mm.
so popular. So I think Western publishers are going to adapt their strategies and the way they enter markets depending on the territories and trying to meet those local needs. So I don't see them changing course on China at all, particularly when I noted earlier more than 700 million people playing games in China as well. So just a huge market that's kind of difficult to ignore despite the challenges to get in there. Anyway, let's move on to story number 2. And this is an interesting piece from Video Game Chronicles, a really cool detail about Rise of the Tomb Raider's exclusivity to Xbox way back in 2015. So some people might remember that the sequel to the 2013 Tomb Raider reboot from Square Enix was announced, I think, at E3 2014, and then at Gamescom 2014. Xbox announced that it would be coming exclusively to Xbox 360 and Xbox One at the time in 2015. There was a huge uproar, a massive community backlash. Ben, surely you remember this hullabaloo,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the main thing here is like it was a hullabaloo at the time, and it changed Xbox tactic. Like they did this, they felt like they had to. Obviously, they had a bit of an issue with exclusive at the time, and Sony was just mopping up, taking everything else. So they kind of felt like they had to. But I'm pretty sure straight after this is when Phil Spencer went, "No, we're not going to do exclusives anymore, like timed third-party exclusives." I mean, so yeah, it was a big investment. It got a big outcry, and ultimately they haven't really done it again, not to this degree at least.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get dive into this story, thanks so much to Stevivor. Take that to you, Steve, for the Twitch Prime sub. Thank you very much. And GPN Hall of Gamers, thank you for the raid. Hope you had a great stream. I was tuning in earlier, so thanks so much for joining. I hope everyone is having a great evening wherever you are. Right now, we're talking about Microsoft's exclusivity of Rise of the Tomb Raider way back in 2015, and as Ben noted, yeah, hugely controversial at the time, particularly because Tomb Raider, traditionally found its, set its roots in the PlayStation community, right? Like that's where Tomb Raider began life on the original PlayStation, and then here we are in 2015. It became an exclusive, and you're right, Ben. Phil Spencer has been quite vocal about not wanting to. He doesn't like these timed exclusives, and we've sort of seen them lean away from it, in the past few years. Whereas Sony are really happy to continue to do that. I think that year or a year later, they had Street Fighter V as an exclusive. Which never came to Xbox, so it wasn't even timed on their end. They just
exclusive.
In perpetuity they have snatched that as well. And even recently, things like Final Fantasy VII Remake still not available on Xbox as well. So definitely. But interesting, this was the main piece of this story was the reported cost of this exclusivity deal, reported to be $100 million. I take it US. That's according to the LinkedIn profile of former Square Enix corporate development director Fabian Rossini, the exec who claims to have negotiated the deal with Microsoft. His profile was widely circulated on social media this week before the claim was seemingly edited out, but not before it was archived by a Twitter user. If accurate, the figure offers a rare glimpse into the actual cost of platform exclusivity deals. However, it's likely that the figure mentioned by Rossini includes other elements beyond the straight deal price, such as marketing commitments or an advance of profits. Like the article correctly points out here, Ben, we don't really see the behind the curtains and the exact number on these types of deals, but when you see $100 million, the cost of a AAA game in and of itself as the price of this, how do you feel?
Look, it's pricey, but not surprising. Like when you really think about it and how much games make, it's going to cost you a lot to get a third party. Like how much was Square Enix make if they sold that day one that they're potentially losing, not putting it on PlayStation, which was the market leader by a big way at that point. It did come to PC as well, I think, as well as Xbox, or a similar time, maybe before PlayStation went to PC. But yeah, like you have to pay to do that. And I think, as you mentioned, they've kind of lifted the curtain. We don't often see this. So more than, people are probably a bit surprised that Tomb Raider cost $100 million. I think a lot of these deals cost around that, potentially more now. So it's more that we're seeing what is actually paid, what Sony is probably paying for some of these games that they're getting. I don't know what they paid for something like Deathloop. Probably less there because they got like a 2-for-1 deal with Bethesda. But it's a lot of money. They obviously felt like they had to at the time. And as you say, it was a PlayStation franchise originally, but it doesn't feel very PlayStation-y to me anymore. And I thought it fit on Xbox because we had Uncharted at the time being so strong and like PlayStation's big franchise. And Xbox still doesn't have that, action adventure third-person style game. And it seemed to fit the bill. So I thought it was a good move. But Xbox seemed to regret it immediately. I think having the 360 version kind of hurt them because straight away the PlayStation fans were just kind of saying, "Oh, it's cross-gen, it's terrible." Um, I can't remember that much negativity about a timed exclusive, and I don't think it will happen again. People are just kind of over it now.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I remember the game reviewed really well. In fact, it's probably my favorite Tomb Raider game to date. I really enjoyed the 2013 reboot, and never actually played Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I just remember sort of
Yeah,
I had my fill with Rise, and I thought it was a really
that's
great
it.
game. Some amazing open hub, world design. That was really really cool. Yeah. So when you mentioned that we sort of don't see much hoopla around or complaints
Mm.
around these timed exclusivities. I get the sense like because let me just how am I going to word this? I think about like the most recent examples of timed exclusivity, and it's certainly mostly coming from the PlayStation side, right? Like
Yeah.
we're seeing things like Final Fantasy. Or PlayStation in general just get really nice and cozy with Square Enix. Final Fantasy VII being exclusive, Forspoken being another exclusive, and Final Fantasy 16 being another exclusive from them as well. And apparently, Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to come to other platforms, hopefully Xbox, in the future. And most people, estimated that would be 12 months. And apparently, the deal originally was that, but it has been extended, and we have no visibility on when that's going to happen. But do we see this as a tactic that will continue? Because at least looking on the Xbox side of things, you see Microsoft invest in 23 studios. Do they really, when they have so much content from those studios coming out over the next few years, do we really see the
Mm.
need for them to be throwing $100 million at the likes of Capcom or Ubisoft or EA or Square or anyone else for timed exclusivity? Yeah, do you think it's something that we'll continue to see in the industry?
We won't see it again from Xbox. We will see it a lot from PlayStation. They've set up their systems very differently. So Xbox is just buying the studios they want. They've got their own, as you mentioned, they've got 23 studios. They can bring out as much as they want, basically. Um, PlayStation they're the market leader and they have been for a long time. So they can kind of do what they want. I remember they had for the players as their tagline for a while. I think they've slowly dropped that because they're not really anymore. They're kind of for the PlayStation players. Um, which is, that's fine. That's what they're doing. But Xbox is a lot more. We want you to play on any device so long as you subscribe to Game Pass. So they're still in for their own means. They don't care about hardware as much anymore.
Mm.
I don't think they care about those third-party exclusives. It's very similar to Netflix. Like they don't want to sign something which they're going to lose. They want to just have that constant stable of stuff which they can rely on. Um, so yeah, I think we'll keep seeing it from PlayStation around the same time as Tomb Raider, maybe slightly after they got like the big exclusive, which is still with them to this day, which is the Call of Duty maps 30 days earlier.
Yep.
And you kind of think that doesn't really matter, but the amount of people that play COD is outrageous. And yeah, it was a big deal when they were 30 days early on Xbox, like 360 days. And now that they're free, like it's still a big deal. So
Mm.
they probably pay a lot more than 100 mil for that, and that's for some maps for 30 days early. So yeah.
Yeah, they've done really well with that whole Call of Duty deal. I remember when Xbox had it back in the 360 days, right? When Modern Warfare and Black Ops were sort of reigning supreme in like that 08, 09 era.
Mm.
And they sort of swapped sides, I think, at the launch of Black Ops 3 way back in 2015. So when sort of PlayStation picked it up. And they've done well to make, PlayStation feel like the home of Call of Duty. Call of Duty esports are all played on PlayStation consoles. And even now with something like Warzone, you're getting exclusive perks via PlayStation, or you're getting access to the Vanguard, closed alpha or closed beta before any other platform as well. So if you're a Call of Duty fan and you want the best experience, then you're probably going to go to PlayStation for that. So I think they've done a good job.
That's it.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I agree with you that I don't think it's going to timed exclusivity isn't something that's going to happen much on the Xbox side anymore. I'll quickly get to chat though briefly. Jason Neon Mirror says PlayStation fans, Xbox has no exclusive. Xbox gets exclusive. PlayStation fans, I can't believe you have Tomb Raider as an exclusive. It definitely felt like that way back in the day, didn't it? Where
Yeah.
was screaming for more content. I think most people were just upset that they weren't investing in their own exclusive content, right? They were paying to take away a game from another user base. So I can see that side of the argument. I think when we're thinking about Xbox's strategy moving forward, timed exclusivities still exist in some sense. You're seeing things like Arc 2 being announced as Xbox exclusive and PC, but dropping day one into Game Pass. And I think that's probably what you're going to see more of, right? Like games will come to all platforms, but they will be on Game Pass day one.
Yeah.
So it behooves you to, pick it up on Xbox because it's just going to be part of your subscription. We're seeing that with things like A Plague Tale Requiem, which, you know, the Innocence has done really well for Focus Home Interactive on Game Pass, and so seemingly they've jumped back on board with Game Pass again for the day one launch of the sequel, which bodes well for everyone, right? Like if you're a PlayStation gamer, you still get access to the game, but if you're on Xbox, you don't need to purchase it outright. So yeah, I think that's probably the strategy we'll see from Xbox moving forward. But I am keen to see if PlayStation get more aggressive with this. We know that they've got like a ton of sort of publishing deals lined up, which, you know, they're paying to develop those games, so that's totally fair that they would be exclusive. But yeah, I'm keen to see if more publishers than Square Enix will jump on the bandwagon here. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. Moving on now, story number 3. Let's talk about licensed games. Recently there was a piece on gamesindustry.biz speaking about MGM, the movie distributor, wanting to push into video games with, quote, modernized nostalgia. I'll bring it up here so everyone can see. This is by James Batchelor, EIC, over at gamesindustry.biz. The Hollywood giant tells us about its plans for the video games space as it seeks to revitalize dormant franchise. I'll scroll down briefly and I can list just a couple of the IP under the MGM banner. These includes things like James Bond, Legally Blonde, Pink Panther, Addams Family, Rocky, Creed, RoboCop, Stargate, and Vikings Valhalla. Ben, all IP that just scream suitable for video games, wouldn't you agree?
Well, there was a big one there at the start. It's actually on my desk. I'm going to show it to you. You would never believe if I asked you to guess 100 games of the last game that I finished in lockdown that we had for 1 week in Adelaide. Sorry to mention it. You would never guess it. Is because it is this 007 Legends.
Oh, wow.
Terrible. And the reason is because in the real lockdown last year, like March 2020, when everything shut down, April, whenever that was, I thought I'm going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to get my gamer score up to 200,000, and I think it was like 140 or something at the time, and I did that. That's how much
well done.
spare time I had. And 2, I thought I'm going to play all the 360 Bond games because I hadn't played any of them. So I bought them all. I got through the other 3, which is Quantum of Solace, the GoldenEye remake, but with Daniel Craig in it weirdly, and Bloodstone, which is like an original game. And
I was struggling to think of that. I think that was Bloodstone was the most recent one, right? Yeah.
Well, this was the most recent. 007
that
was the last one. 2012 maybe? Yeah, for Skyfall. Because so there's like 6 missions in this game. The 6th one I can't play because it's like DLC with Daniel Craig. You can't get it anymore. They discontinued it immediately. This game is so bad. There hasn't been a Bond game since. Like this killed the license. So who published this? Activision.
Yeah, they held the license for the longest time. Yeah.
Yeah, the other 3 games were pretty good. Like Treyarch made the Quantum of Solace game. It was like a COD game basically, but it was fun. Yeah, so this one was just a disaster, and I'm glad to see that IO Interactive is coming back with Bond. It's been like 10 years since the last one, and they're the perfect developer, aren't they? Like Hitman meets Bond is exactly it. It's what all the other ones were missing. These are all just shooters, these games I've mentioned. So they're bringing that stealth, they're bringing that different ways of doing things. In theory, it's perfect. So I'm glad that's coming back. It sounds like it's coming back big budget. Yeah, the other ones you mentioned, probably less so, but I think they are making a Legally Blonde game.
Yeah, so let me get to the article and we can dive into speaking about, you know, matching video games with game developers, with IP. MGM is also working to establish itself more in the video game space, which Robert Marek, the company's executive vice president for global consumer products and experiences, tells us is a, quote, a significant area that can, quote, elevate our properties and brands. He says, gaming has really taken a lion's share. Is that a pun? Is that an MGM pun? I think it is. In terms of how consumers are viewing and consuming brands and sharing their fandom, he says. Gen Z and millennials are looking at gaming opportunities to understand properties more than they do with TV or film. Now, this is something I hadn't really thought of, right? But there's probably like a whole generation of gamers, younger gamers, who are experiencing someone like, you know, the Rambo skin in Call of Duty Warzone for the first time, and that is their first touch point with that IP. So yeah, I think Robert's onto something here. It's an area that's been underleveraged on the MGM side for many, many years. The article continues, the company has been paying particularly close attention to how the likes of Disney and Warner Brothers have been expanding their franchises with video games. Matthew Sousa, who, when we spoke to him, was director of MGM's interactive business development, but recently moved to Amazon, points to Insomniac's Spider-Man games as examples. Both titles are authentic experiences that stay true to the franchise, but also provide something specific for the video game space, which I think we can all agree with. Quote, that's something we're looking to accomplish as well. Disney, Warner Brothers, and our other studio counterparts have done a fantastic job in the space as of late. When I look at Disney's new announcements, I get inspired myself. We want these games to stand on their own with or without new films or TV shows being greenlit. Our unique value proposition at MGM is that we're providing nostalgia, but modernized nostalgia. So I think the article notes here that there is a Legally Blonde mobile game in development. An Addams Family game was released in 2019. Big Rumble Boxing Creed Champions launches this week, and there are plans for a Pink Panther mobile game too. Even RoboCop, has staged a comeback as a playable character in Mortal Kombat, and a new standalone title, RoboCop Rogue City, was announced in July. I was vaguely remembering that. It didn't look amazing, but you never know. I'm going to judge before I play it. The studio is also exploring the possibility of games built around its less prominent IP with Army of Darkness and Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So I mean, we look at those the IP under its belt. I quickly scanned like its filmography under MGM from like the last 3 decades, and nothing else really jumped out at me as particularly calling out for, screaming for a video game adaptation, unless we want to see some cool like adventure game from Woody Allen's films. That could be interesting.
I don't think so.
Like obviously, Ben, Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars doing some great work in the video game space. What are your thoughts now on, we've kind of, after the Arkham series, hit this sort of golden era of licensed games, whereas back in like 360 PS2 generation, they were all seeming movie cash grabs. Are you hopeful that this is the sort of thing that MGM's pursuing?
Well, we've changed tack. Like in those days, everything was THQ just published a quick movie cash in, and that was their market, basically. That's what they did. They did some games okay and some games really poorly, and they all made enough money, basically. The questionable part about what he said is, they look at Disney, they look at Warner Bros. And what they've done, and they're doing really well. Yeah, but you don't quite have the roster of those guys in sense of like what little kids are going to want to play, especially. Like Disney had just got to kill it. They've got all their Disney stuff, then they've got Star Wars, which is just all like big selling games, and they don't have to be based on existing movies or properties even. And even Warner Bros., as you said, you mentioned Batman, like a Batman game or series, which wasn't based on any movie, turned out to be great. They're doing that Harry Potter Legends thing. Like these are big franchises which have mass appeal. I don't think RoboCop's going to do that. So that's probably their issue. Like Bond is the big one for them. And I think that's what keeps the studio afloat. I think that's why this new movie keeps getting delayed, because they're like, we need this one, fellas.
Yeah.
Like the Legally Blonde mobile game probably will do well. Small sidebar. So like 2013, I worked for a site called GamesFix, which was part of 9MSN. So they have like a celebrity section called The Fix, and we did the games reporting for a year. And they were not into games coverage at all. Like we were like, that was when GTA was coming out. The new console had been announced, and they were kind of like, people don't really care about this stuff. Eventually, they did publish some of that stuff. Like you had to pitch hard to get your stuff on the homepage of 9MSN, which at the time doesn't exist anymore. But at the time, it was Australia's biggest media outlet because it's your homepage on Internet Explorer. So it was your biggest media outlet with mums, basically, who didn't know how to change their homepage. So there was a game that Kim Kardashian released, a mobile game, and they're like, great, the mums will love that. They put that on the homepage, and it got unbelievable hits. And they're like, more of this. We want to see more Kim Kardashian mobile games. And my point is, as much as you and I might think no one's going to play that, there absolutely is interest in stuff like that, because people just flick through the App Store and they think, oh yeah, I know Legally Blonde. I'll try. If it's like free or 99 cents or something, it'll be free, won't it? And they'll just have microtransactions. I think there is a market for that type of stuff if they do it well and they pick the right platform.
Yeah, no, you're totally right on just there being a market. Like, there is no way I'm ever going to be targeted for a Legally Blonde mobile video game ad. But that will exist and probably do really, really well. But keeping it mostly in like the traditional AAA game space. Recently, we got the announcement of Marvel Midnight Suns, which I've currently got on the screen now. We've just seen a gameplay reveal for it. Thinking about that, and obviously the topic we've been talking about, licensed games, and them Disney, or MGM, pardon me, being inspired by Disney's approach of pairing their IP with some of the most talented developers in the world. The article noted Spider-Man's done incredibly well in that sense, and hopefully we see it from more Marvel properties. Avengers sort of stumbling out of the block at least at the very beginning, and trying to regain its composure. And he's hoping, fingers crossed, Guardians of the Galaxy does well this year as well. But when you see Marvel teaming up with Firaxis, Firaxis, pardon me, one of the the most talented tactical turn-based tactics sort of developers in the world. And you
Yeah.
mentioned IO as well, like a stealth action developer working on Bond. Are there any other developers that sort of spring to mind as like, please marry them with this particular IP from outside of the gaming industry?
Good question. Well, I mean, I think IO is the perfect one. Like, I was amazed that happened. I'm sure we speculated about that, and then it actually happened. It kind of seemed like that can't be true. But I think Midnight Suns is a great idea, even because like a bunch of my friends who used to play heaps of games, but now they're 30-ish and don't have that much time. All they play is Slay the Spire. Like that's it.
Ah.
And so to kind of have slightly a few other things, but that's the main thing they play. So I don't know if they've read the room and they kind of looked at that type of game, which you can pick up and play it in small bursts, or you can play for hours. And it kind of looks complicated, but that card turn-based gameplay, it's actually pretty easy to pick up. If you played any card game, basically, you'll figure it out. So if they've kind of seen that type of game do well, and then they've seen Marvel, obviously, is just a known quantity, that's genius. They may have not done that. That's what I think they've done. Yeah, otherwise, I'm not really sure which other developers have nailed stuff. There's obviously, the one that I would like to see is Playground. They're working on Fable and Forza Horizon. I think if they did like a Top Gear Grand Tour style, like you're meant to just explore the world, they've kind of done that in the game already where they kind of had that tie-in. But if they
Yep.
focus on that more as like that road trip with friends, kind of like how Flight Simulator now is kind of oh, you can fly somewhere that you can't really go.
Mm.
Do that like road trip type of thing. Make it co-op. I guess the crew tried to do that, but yeah, that kind of, there's something there potentially. But they've already tapped into it. I think stuff like that is when you just do that little licensed add-on, and they're great at doing that. Like I never thought a Legos add-on for Forza Horizon would be great, and I played that like crazy. So, and the Hot Wheels ones as well. So they're
Oh,
all,
Hot Wheels,
all
yeah.
over it. Yeah, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, no,
What
I
about
really
you?
love this combination of sort of licensed IP, not necessarily getting some kind of spin-off adaptation, but just finding their way in some cool
Mm.
mechanic into the game, whether it just be a skin or an actual mode. One of the one that jumps to mind just because of my experience at Ubisoft was Casa de Papel, which is that the money heist Netflix show
Oh
was in
yeah.
like Rainbow
Yep.
Six Siege for like a couple of weeks as well. I'm thinking of all the different skins in Fortnite also, and just other great game to game crossovers that we see all the time. Also, what I think of licensed IP and the pairing them with really talented developers. I think any kind of sort of shooting IP, whether or like pardon me, an IP that features a character shooting, I'm just like, give it to the Coalition, please. Like, give me a
Yeah.
Mandalorian game, give me a Star Wars Republic Commando game, give me a Punisher game from the Coalition. I don't care what it is, but just let them work on something other than Gears, and yeah,
Mm.
give us a really good adaptation of that. I think Remedy could do well with like Doctor Strange as well. With their cool like sort of mysterious storytelling tropes that they like to include. I think that could be fascinating. And yeah, I hope that we get to see other really talented developers like IO really get to flex also. I don't think Bungie would ever jump at the opportunity to do something licensed. I think they're most
Mm.
keen to just
No.
build their own universes and just make all the money themselves instead of having to
Yeah.
to pay license or whatever. But yeah, I think this bodes really well for the future of licensed game. And crazy to think that only just a couple of generations ago, we're in much more dire circumstances, or the health of licensed
Yeah.
games wasn't all there. And it really, I think,
Yeah.
mostly
Like
thanks
this one.
to the Arkham franchise, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, things have really improved. So things are looking really, really positive in
Mm.
that
Do you think
sense.
if Arkham hadn't been the big success, would we have seen like Spider-Man? Or would people have just, if that had tanked, would anyone else have taken that gamble?
It's a good question, right? Because I think just trying to think. I mean, maybe because the the Marvel IP in particular, and well, actually, I think we could probably draw it all back to how well sort of wells might be the wrong term here, but Disney owning all these valuable properties, right, and wanting to squeeze the most money out of them as they can. They're obviously seeing the video game space as an incredibly lucrative market that they can't ignore, and they're going to be inspired by the best practices of that industry, at least you hope. So I think
Mm.
even without the example of Arkham City there, that maybe you don't see that, but maybe Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man doesn't turn out to be as similar to something like Arkham City as we saw, right, with that counter-based combat that Arkham really popularized, and seeped into other IP as well. We saw Mad Max from Warner Brothers Is that Montreal? I can't remember who actually made that one. I think it was Warner Brothers Montreal. That had a very similar sort of fight style mechanic, but obviously leveraged the strengths of the IP as well with vehicular combat also. And even Shadow of Mordor also stealing some, Assassin's Creed, Arkham mechanics and vibes as well. So, I think, maybe, that's a good question because I don't think those games happen without Arkham, right? So, maybe it's all thanks to Rocksteady that we're getting all these fantastic games.
That's it, yeah.
Someone send them more royalties, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to end the top three there. Those are the top three news stories from this week. We'll now dive into one big theme, topic, and trend. It's just breaking overnight that PlayStation has announced their next showcase, which has been a long time coming. We haven't had a sizable showcase from them since September of last year. We had a couple of state of plays that most people, I think, would describe as being hit and miss. Like just generally before we dive into the news topic itself, Ben, what are your thoughts on obviously PlayStation being somewhat quiet for the most of 2021? And the last big thing that we saw from them was that September showcase last year where they sort of ended it with a tease for God of War. We had the Horizon State of Play in May, and then more recently that other one which detailed a couple of indie games and Deathloop. But for the most part, it's been kind of silent on Sony's side.
Yeah, I think it's all to do with, it's all COVID related. Everything's been delayed and pushed out, so they probably haven't had that much to say. Whereas on the other side, Xbox, they had to go. Like, they didn't launch with a game. They just put the console out there, basically, and Halo's still not here yet. That was meant to be their big hit. They kind of had to go in with a big E3. They didn't have a choice, and they did. They nailed it. They probably one of the best, if not the best, of the last 20 or so years from Xbox. PlayStation weren't there at all, of course. They don't do E3 anymore, but they did pop up with a little state of play, which was pretty nothing slightly afterwards. And they didn't pretend like it was going to be a big deal. They kind of said it wouldn't be. So I'm not surprised that they haven't shown that much yet, but they need to show something. Like, I don't think they have a holiday game, do they, at the moment? Everything else is pushed back until early next year.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I wanted to start the conversation, is that the further we got into the year and past, that the E3, and at this point past Gamescom as well, I was wondering if they show up at all, because they had noted that God of War, a while back they bumped that into 2022. They weren't sure whether Horizon Forbidden West was going to launch in 2022 either, and recently that got officially delayed. So, with them having shown Deathloop and Kenna, which serve as probably the two biggest launches for the PlayStation 5 at the tail end of this year, biggest exclusive launches, I should say. And they've been shown off quite a bit. There really isn't any need to show off much else for their 2021 slate. We saw Call of Duty get a massive showing at Gamescom, and typically that would sort of be built into a lot of the PlayStation showcases in the past. So I thought to myself, maybe we don't hear from PlayStation all this year, maybe not until the Game Awards where they're ready to show off some more things, but clearly we were wrong. And they're rocking up with a brand new showcase. It's going to happen Friday, September 10, 6 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, if you're like us and watching from Australia. So nice and early for us. Thankfully, a lot of these showcases, particularly from Xbox, happen at like 3 a.m. and there's no way I'm going to get up for a 90-minute Gamescom showcase from Xbox. But 6 a.m. PlayStation, I will definitely get up and probably be live reacting to this one right here on the channel. But let's get down to the details. Like I said, Friday the September 10th for us, so essentially less than 7 days away at this point. Sid Schumann, Senior Director of Communications over at SIE, has said, you've been awfully patient, and we thank you for that, and now we're looking forward to showing you what we've been working on. Tune in next Thursday, September 9, or Friday for our time, like I mentioned, for a look into the future of PS5. The showcase will weigh in at around 40 minutes and include updates from PlayStation Studios and some of the industry's most imaginative developers for games releasing this holiday and beyond. And stick around after the presentation to get more updates from some of the studio teams featured in the showcase. One thing to note, PlayStation's next generation of VR won't make an appearance this time, but there will still be plenty of great PS5 games from developers large and small. We hope you can join us. So, doing well to set expectations there. No VR, but no other sort of expectation management either. Like, not saying, here are the games we're showing, here are the games, here's a list of the games we're not showing, which is something they did recently for that aforementioned State of Play, right? Where they came up and said, tune in for looks at Deathloop and a couple of indie titles and maybe some surprises from third-party partners. We won't be talking about, God of War and Horizon. So seemingly, like, I'm keen to hear your expectations on this one, Ben, because mine are pretty high. PlayStation know how to put on a showcase. Both of their PS5 showcases last year were fantastic. We saw reveals of, the exclusive lineup like Miles Morales, Demon Souls, Sackboy. We saw Horizon, God of War was teased, Gran Turismo 7, Ratchet was announced, Returnal. So, yeah, like, do you think we're going to get like the next salvo of big exclusives from PlayStation at this event? There's only 40 minutes though.
Well, that's a long time for something like this. Like you can get through a lot if, as long as they go with the scissor rule and it's just game, 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 which is PlayStation's move recently. And to be fair, Xbox has kind of followed that better. I still think Xbox is too awkward in their live streams, but they're getting there. PlayStation basically started in like 2015, I think. Before that, at E3, they always used to have like a slow corporate spiel. And the one where they announced Final Fantasy VII Remake, it was just constant games. And I don't know if you've been to E3, but like the PlayStation press conference live. So you've been to a day of press conferences. Back then, Xbox was on the morning at like 9 a.m. They later moved. And you'd eventually go to like the whole day and you'd get to PlayStation at 6 p.m. And it's this big dark room. And like you flew in the day before, so you're so jet lagged and you're just kind of like, oh. And like I've fallen asleep in those corporate spiels, but that one kept me awake because it was just game, game, game. And they've kept that in their state of play. So you can get a lot in 40 minutes. But yeah, I don't know what it is. Like if God of War and Horizon are not there, that's kind of what I thought they'd fill like 15, 20 of those minutes with. And
Also, they haven't said that they're not here. I was just saying that
they're
was
not
for
there.
the previous state of play. So there's a good chance they will be here. Yeah.
Okay, I think they will be there then for a lot of it. If I've been critical of PlayStation for anything, it's that they announce stuff too far out. But I think no one's doing that now, COVID style, because you just don't know when things are. Like to go back to Final Fantasy VII, they announced it, and it came part of the game. Sorry, came out like 6 years later. I don't know where the rest of it is. Maybe that's part of it actually. So yeah, I just don't know what it is. Like, and they have a habit of announcing Gran Turismo games 10 years before they come out on a different platform. Like, I think they've gotten better at announcing here's stuff you'll get to play within the next year or so in this generation. And I don't know what it is. Like, what is it? I saw a rumor that the Uncharted collection is coming to PC, which is a super old game. I think it would include 4 as well. But it is that thing of like Xbox has put their games on PC for ages. Sony has just started doing it, and I think there would be melts about that. People would just be furious that you can't do that to Nathan. I don't know why. Like, just play wherever you want to play. Who cares? That's the only thing I've seen leaked, and it was a dodgy looking screenshot. So no idea if that's true.
Yeah, so I think it's safe to say that we'll probably see Horizon there. It's coming out in February of 2022. And the games that were delayed from 2021. God of War was originally delayed from 2021. I can't remember if Gran Turismo was ever slated for 2021 as well, but that's currently on track for 2022.
Whatever they tell you with Gran Turismo, ignore it.
Exactly.
Years
it's just
away.
like, 2022, so PlayStation 6. Sounds good, Yamiuchi. I'll be there. Yeah, we also have like big third-party exclusives from partners like Square Enix with Forspoken currently slated for 2022. No release window for Final Fantasy 16 right now, so I'm wondering if that's going to show up. I think there was a quote recently from one of the directors saying that the next time they show it, they want to be close to release. So, and I think because there was speculation about whether it shows up at Tokyo Game Show, so maybe it's too early for Final Fantasy 16 at the moment, but we'll just have to wait and see. And the other one that jumps out is Ghostwire Tokyo, which was originally slated for, I think, October this year, later pushed into 2022. I think Bethesda have said early 2022, so I think safe to say we see it there. But could you see any other big surprises coming? Like, that Nathan Drake, or pardon me, the Uncharted collection for PC. I think putting that at a PlayStation 5 event would really shake the fan base to its core.
Yeah, probably not looking at this.
But what about the rumors of Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, games from Kojima? Obviously, there's a bunch of other studios from PlayStation that we don't know what they're working on. Could Insomniac, the core team who worked on the 2018 Spider-Man, be revealing something here?
Potentially. Well, Kojima will be at the Game Awards. He just can't leave Keeley behind, so he won't be here.
Joined at the hip, those two, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I don't know. Potentially, like Metal Gear would be great though if it happened. One I just thought of that's rumored. I don't know if they would do a third-party game that just has PlayStation ties, but there was the rumor of the GTA trilogy being remastered and being released, and we haven't seen anything about that. And GTA 5, the current gen version, is getting some PS5 exclusive. Something's early or something or other, so they might confirm whatever that is and then show that that's coming. And that's a super easy remaster that will just print money. So the fact that hasn't been announced yet, potentially Rockstar would just say, yeah, do it for us. They don't really care that much about announcements. They often just tweet stuff out. So, which is actually Nintendo's strategy. Like you mentioned that PlayStation have tempered expectations slightly. Nintendo did it a lot for their last direct when they kind of said, this is just holiday season games. So there'll be no new hardware. The next week they tweet out Switch OLED model, like classic Nintendo. Um,
I just saw that news cycle. They want 2 weeks
yeah,
of news, not one.
yeah, that's right. Here's that thing we said we definitely weren't doing. Here's a tweet about it because we know you're going to hate it. Uh, yeah, so they haven't done that tempering, which means it has to be good, right? So whatever it is, I think there needs to be something that makes us think, oh, I didn't see that coming. Like if it's
Mm.
Silent Hill, I don't even know what the status of that is. When was the last game that came out? Like 10 years ago or so?
Couldn't tell you. I'm not a horror fan. I've just seen the
That's
rumors.
it.
They
Okay.
obviously, yeah. So yeah, we just have to wait and see. Obviously, Xboxes, we know their roadmap from like now until the end of 2023 at this point, and some games
Mm.
even beyond that probably. Do you think PlayStation like would announce games that are further off? Obviously, they're selling every PlayStation 5 they put on the shelf, so they're not under any great need to really sell the machine, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I thought that maybe we don't get a showcase from them this year. But could you see them saying, okay, here are some titles further out, other than, yeah, what we're showing up with in 2022?
I hope they don't do anything too crazy far away, like 10 years, 5 years. But 23 games, potentially okay. It's just how things are now. I do think they're a little bit worried for the first time in ages because so Xbox poor launch lineup for the Xbox Series X. There's no denying that.
Mm.
And they've kind of come out pretty strong this year. And they've, as you say, they've got game for the next few months, and they're all on Game Pass, and people are loving it basically. And would you play something? Would you go buy something like Flight Simulator, then Psychonauts, then 12 Minutes, then Forza Horizon? Like, it's such a mix that you probably try them all because they get such rave reviews, or they're just a bit different and you want to try it.
Mm.
And PlayStation is probably, up until now, they've had the luxury of leading so much that they could just kind of sit back and say, buy a PlayStation, we'll give you a game eventually. And they didn't really have to do much more. Here's COD maps early. And they've been like that for a few years, to be honest. And they haven't had to do anything else because when they come out with a Spider-Man, it's great. Like, and they come out with a Ratchet and Clank, and it's great. And they don't have to go above and beyond to win us back like Xbox is trying to do and has been trying to do for so long. So I think it might have twigged recently that, oh, hang on, Xbox actually does have games now. Buying all these studios has done something, and they're delivering now. And they're not delivering big necessarily yet. They're going to deliver way bigger in the next few years. So yeah, I think they're a little bit worried, and they kind of have to show some stuff to kind of just keep people, like, if you couldn't get a PlayStation but you could get an Xbox, it'd be silly not to get one.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think, yeah, I think there's, and we'll probably get into this with the other topic about Forbidden West a little down the track as well. But I think there's something about, there being no business need, obviously, to have a showcase like this. Because let's be honest, like, putting together these huge demos for these games pulls resources away from core development of the title itself. I remember way back when the Halo 2 documentary that came out with the Halo 2 limited edition, and Bungie being very transparent and saying that we poured all these resources into creating this live gameplay demo that we showed to consumers and press over at E3, and that has impacted our development schedule immensely. And they sort of, I remember Halo 3 rocking up with just 2 trailers, one in '06 and one in '07, and it's why you didn't see something like a campaign demonstration from Xbox at Gamescom this year for Infinite either. So yeah, I am mindful that, like, when there's no business need, why to show off your games when you're selling every single console you put on the shelf, and these games are going to sell well. I think Horizon hit over 10 million sales across its life cycle. That's Zero Dawn, pardon me, the first game. Yeah, you know that you're probably going to sell well, so why bother with a showcase? The flip side of that, I think, and what Xbox is doing really well this generation and has done for the last few years, is cultivating a very passionate, excited fan base. And I think that has played really well into their consumer first or their customer first strategy. Yeah, there's, I think the frustration on the PlayStation side has been just like, why are they being so quiet? As I just mentioned, the business doesn't need them to be any more loud than they're currently being because they're already successful. But yeah, I think from a community engagement perspective, there needs to be, you need to feed them something, like particularly when you don't have any big exclusives in the latter half of the year. You need to give them something to hold them over until Horizon drops in February. So I am glad that we are seeing a showcase from them. And yeah, to my earlier point, I think they're going to really rock up and knock out socks off. And what's great is that, you know, I think there are going to be surprises. For the most part, a lot of Xbox's stuff leaks beforehand, and so you're not really blown away when you see the announcement of, you know, a particular game that's already been spoken about on podcasts for you know, going on weeks at that point. So I'm really hoping that we get to Friday next week, and yeah, we're blown away by some pretty big announcements. Let's move now into the second topic of part of this question time, and that is regarding the success of these digital gaming events. We've just rattled off the fact that the showcases from PlayStation have been fantastic. Nintendo have been doing directs for ages. We know that things like the Gamescom opening night live, their viewership has gone up year on year, and Xbox have been improving as well. I know as well that, you know, Ubisoft's viewership of their oh no, what are they called? The
Ubisoft Forward.
Forward, thank you. Oh, bad. That's really bad for a play. But that viewership has been better than any of their prior E3s as well. So these digital events, way cheaper to produce, and have also been performing better. Ben, you mentioned, you know, you were a frequent attendee of industry shows like E3 and Gamescom. Do we ever see physical, you know, showcases like that come back? You know, before COVID, we got to E3 2019. I think it was just Bethesda, Xbox.
Yeah, it was weak. I was there. It was.
Was there anyone
felt
else?
dead.
There
were
Square Enix, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so to go back,
EA's was pre-recorded.
EA wasn't even there. They were EA Play across the road.
Yeah.
What did I have to do? Because I was a judge at E3 in 2019, so I got to play Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and they weren't officially at E3. They were just in a little room with nothing on the door, like downstairs, so that they could win an award, basically. And Call of Duty was in the hotel across the road. Like, there was no one at the convention center. And I've been saying this for a long time. So basically, the people watching at home, and I used to, back in the day, a long time ago, get up and watch them all in the middle of the night. Back when I was a uni student and I could do that, it was great. I loved doing that. And when we had forums to chat to people with, fantastic. And then I got to go to a lot, and it was very different, because what you call E3 as a viewer at home is what we still get with a digital show. Like, it's just presenting a bunch of games. That's not E3 when you go. Like, that's the day before E3. E3 is then 3 to 4 days on the convention floor going around. Most of the time it wasn't open to the public, but there were a lot of people in there. I don't know where they came from. And you had all your media appointments, so you just whiz past them and go speak to who you need to speak to. Very busy. You play a game for like 15 minutes. Gamescom, which we went to together in 2018.
That's the last time we saw each other. My one and only Gamescom. Yeah, that's the last time we saw each other.
It was my only Gamescom too. It was great though. Much more relaxed though. Like, they had the media side and the public side separate.
Amazing.
And it was buzzing. I went over to the public side just to check it out, and it was so much busier than E3's ever been.
It was. I mean, I haven't been to E3, but for those, you know, maybe Australian viewers who've been to something like PAX or EB Games Expo, there's no comparison with Gamescom. It's literally, you step into the crowd and you go where it takes you. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And you just go with the flow, because there's no, like, 400,000 attendees or something stupid. It's ridiculous. Anyway.
Meanwhile, E3 2019, like it's like a big hall. There's two halls actually, and one of them has the console manufacturers and one of them has everyone else basically. And you'd normally walk in and you'd be hit by like 2K, NBA, like something's going on, and there's a TIE fighter over there, and there's like whatever's going on, Just Dance normally, you know, so it's quite loud and a lot happening. And it was just like nothing. Like, the biggest booth was like US Army, come and recruit. And I was like, why are these guys even in here? They must have had an app or something. But yeah, it was like, it just felt like going to that E3, this is 2019, back when you could travel and do things. I kind of felt like E3 as it is not going to be back beyond, I think it had a contract for one more year at the time. And I kind of thought after that, it either needs to move and retool and reboot, or it's going to die. Like, it was just, it didn't feel right. And watching at home, it probably felt like a normal E3, because you watch those digital shows and they're still great. But to go back to your point, like, I hope they don't die. I think that the showing off games, the announcing stuff, that real general excitement can happen digitally anytime. I think all the console holders are now doing a pretty good job at it. Nintendo did it ages ago, because they just didn't want to do press conferences anymore, and they've got a pretty good handle on it now. A shame Iwata's not there anymore, because I think he kind of made it with Reggie, but they still do a pretty good job. But yeah, there's, like, as you mentioned, Gamescom, like, it was just an amazing experience, and I'd be ashamed if something like that couldn't happen it's hard to see something on that size, as you say, like 400,000 people, and I can just picture like the halls jam packed, people waiting in like a coiled up line to play Spider-Man for like 6 hours,
Mm.
and that game had come out like the day before or something. I'm like, just go buy it. Um, but like that was just the excitement, and everyone's dressed up like,
Mm.
not everyone, but heaps of people are, and it's just like fun, and it's kind of like PAX or something in Australia, but really sized up. And that's another one. Unfortunately, PAX isn't happening this year, but I hope it is able to come back. I don't think the online equivalent of things like that, where there aren't announcements, really works as well, because it
Mm.
just, the whole point of it is getting together in that community and being there. So I think that needs to come back physical if it's going to be what it was.
Yeah, I agree. I think yeah. Speaking specifically about like the E3 itself, right? You mentioned it had that one more
Hmm.
year contract on it. I think the ESA is going to try at least one more time. A lot of I think like Phil Spencer and some other big names within on the publisher and platform holder side of things are on the board of the ESA. So so long as they're there, they want that's E3 is their money making machine. So
Hmm.
that's what they're going to try to achieve. I just think I look at, yeah, like I said, viewership of these digital showcases and how much cheaper they are. I think the sentiment around, you know, a gathering place for the industry is nice, but at the end of the day, like, are you really willing to throw millions of dollars on that away each year, just for that point? I think you can do other cool things, right? Like we've seen. Oh, and the other point I want to mention is E3. You know, inherently born as a to meet the needs for trade, right? For retailers to go
Yeah.
over there and see all the games that are coming that holiday or for the rest of the year, and deciding, okay, which games are we going to support the most, or to what extent are we going to buy copies of these games based on how well they're actually presented to the actual retailers. So when you see technologies like Parsec prop up, and retailers are able to play these games online, just on a server that's held like in their local country as well. I see all these other solutions that can accommodate the needs, or sorry, the core purpose of what E3 once was. And I just see it, I'm
Yeah.
like, I think maybe they try another year or two, but I just see all these publishers are dropping off like flies at this point. You now have one less conference because Bethesda and Xbox joined forces, so you're not going to see two conferences there anymore, just the one. I think timing will probably stay the same because June, July is a great time to sort of kick off the rest of the year. But yeah, I can't see. I see these digital showcases just being such an efficient and effective way of doing things. And particularly, yeah, I think for Nintendo as well, something that I didn't think of as well, like really suits them, right? Because Japanese company with Japanese key speakers, might not be all that comfortable up on stage speaking to, an English audience. But, now they just get to pre-record a message and there's voiceover over the top as well. So, yeah, like I always wanted to go to E3. I'm afraid that I will never now. I will now never get to go to E3. So hopefully
Yeah,
I'm
it'd be
wrong.
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to wrap up this entire show, the other point that I wanted to bring out was back on the PlayStation side of things, and that was the recent announcement of obviously Horizon Forbidden West being delayed to early 2022, February 18, I believe, is the current release date. And recently we got a clarification on the pre-orders, pardon me, went live just very recently. All these cool collector's editions for those who are really into that stuff, but some interesting I suppose policies around upgrades between PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. I'm actually going to go to Stevivor. There you go, Steve. I'm plugging the show. We're going to go over to a news article that he himself wrote, and that is regarding these collectors editions. Let me bring it up so everyone can see. He says Horizon Forbidden West does not have a free PS4 to PS5 upgrade path, despite Sony assurances made at the launch of the PS5. While a Sony blog post from September last year states that, quote, PS4 digital versions of launch games will include a free upgrade on both PS5 consoles, Sony today announced that those who purchase Horizon Forbidden West on PS4 will have to pay to upgrade to its PS5 edition. Granted, Horizon Forbidden West isn't a PS5 launch title, but was first slated for a 2021 release before a delay into next year. Here within Australia, the PS4 version of the game is priced at $109.95 Australian dollars, while the PS5 version is $124.95. Gamers can also purchase the more expensive digital deluxe edition from $139.95 Australian. That specific edition provides access to the title across both PS4 and PS5. We'll let you know if Sony addresses the reasons for not offering a free digital upgrade from PS4 to PS5 as originally promised. In the meantime, this is pretty disappointing news for all those still on PS4 planning to jump over to current gen. And obviously, this is in contrast to Xbox's smart delivery sort of service or program, that offers you the game plays on whatever console you throw it into. So that's really good. There's a couple of more details on the PlayStation blog itself, detailing the other collector's editions, which do get you access to both versions, that the dual entitlement, as they're calling it, of the game on PS4 and PS5. There's a collector's edition which has a giant statue of the Tremor Tusk. That one is retailing, I think, exclusively at EB Games for $209.95. It might already be sold out. And JB Hi-Fi has exclusive for the Regala edition, which has an even more impressive Tremor Tusk statue, as well as a bunch of other goodies. That's 399 Australian dollars. So both of those get you access to PS4 and PS5 versions, but not the retail disc. They come with digital codes for the game itself. So it's all a bit confusing, Ben. But I think what I've nutted out here is that if you're a PS4 owner and you only want to play on the physical version of the game, your only option right now is to pay for the physical PS4 disc, which is RRP is 109. Probably get it for like 99 or 89 at Amazon or JB Hi-Fi at launch. But then your only other option, because there is no upgrade path, your only other option is to buy the physical version of the PS5 game, which is RRP 124.95. If you're on the digital side, you can buy the deluxe edition 140. But yeah, there is no upgrade path. Like, you can't upgrade at all from PS4 to PS5. You actually have to, you either buy one or the other, or you buy both digitally. What are your thoughts on this? Because it's all a bit disappointing, frankly.
Yeah, this sucks. I'm going to throw something out at you. I believe in generations. Do you remember that? That lasted like a few minutes until they realized, hang on a second, we can't make enough PS5s to actually get those people these games, which are only on one generation. So Horizon, good example of a game that was never meant to be on PS4 until they realized most of our market still is on PS4. A lot of them may want to stay there, but most of them is because they can't buy a PS5. So
yeah,
that's why it sucks. It's not you choosing, oh, I don't want to upgrade yet. I might in a few years. Maybe fair enough then. It's people can't get this console. So very disappointing. Especially since they've done a pretty good job. Like, if you bought Spider-Man, it was a bit convoluted, but you could upload your save and it would just carry over. And that's how I got my first platinum trophy on PS5, because I already had it on PS4 and it just popped straight away. And I thought, that's great. I've wasted money buying that game. I'm not going to play now. But yeah, like, slightly clunky, not as smooth as Xbox Smart Delivery, but it worked well enough. You just had to remember to keep your old save and upload it to the cloud and then download it on PS5, and it good enough. So yeah, disappointing that they've kind of gone away from that for no real reason. Like, it's just we don't want to. Sucks.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's, I'm glad Steve in his article mentions the shift completely away from their strategy at the launch of PlayStation 5, right, where you had these free upgrade paths. And obviously we've seen other publishers as well dive into either free or sometimes paid. EA and 2K come to mind when it comes to paid upgrade paths as well.
Yeah.
We had
two companies not known for being very player friendly, so Sony doesn't want to be in that company when people are talking about upgrade paths. What EA, 2K, and Sony are doing. That's not where you want to be.
Yeah, but the fact that there is no upgrade path at all, right? Like, you either have to buy, the dual entitlement, as they're calling it, for that premium fee, which EA is doing as well, $139.95. That's a digital version. There is no deluxe physical version. So that is going to be the digital price on the PlayStation Store for probably at least the very first few months after launch. And then also tying it's like, well, if you don't want that, you can get the collector's edition of the Regala edition for $300 or $400 also. I was really racking my brain today just trying to think what is the possible reason here, and the only thing I can think of is that they're just trying to squeeze as much money out of this release as possible. Maybe it's just because the social circle I roll in on Twitter in particular, but I'm not seeing any huge backlash, and it's really surprising to me. Is that surprising to you as well? Because I would see this as like please do better. I put out a tweet today saying, like, count me amongst the chorus of people saying PlayStation do better, but I'm not seeing that being echoed by many people.
I think it will come when the game comes out. People probably haven't even really noticed yet. They haven't thought about it. The people who are most vocal about these things probably did get a PS5, stayed up to the right time when they had a tip off and they knew they had 30 seconds to buy it on Amazon right now and they got one. The people who are going to be most harshly affected by this are people who just want to play a few cool games every year, probably, and they haven't managed to get a PS5 yet, and they would love to play whatever they have when they eventually do upgrade. So they're annoying, not the core fan base like us who are going to buy these games anyway. Like, as much as it's not to go back to Nintendo, but they piss off their fans all the time, and they know we're going to buy their games. Sony's doing the same thing here. They don't Doesn't matter what they do to us. We're going to play these big games. We're not going to ignore something because they've not had a cool upgrade path or an acceptable one even. But it's those probably lesser ones who are not that committed to PlayStation who are going to be most harshly affected, and even going up to 125 for their first party games. Like, 125 gets you what, 3 or 4 months of Game Pass. Like, that's a better
I'm
deal to
honestly
me.
shocked that we didn't see more backlash from that when they first announced that.
Yeah.
Yeah, $70 price tag. Yeah, I mean, yes, they are delivering fantastic games, and they are more expensive to develop than a lot of
Mm.
a lot of other games out there. We're seeing budgets balloon to in excess of 150 million dollars for some of these titles, and they're in development for 5, 6, 7 years, some of them. So, yeah, like Sony needing to balance its books, I don't begrudge, but find a way to do it in a way that doesn't
Yeah.
impact the consumer this much, right? Like, yeah, it was a
Mm.
$25 jump in RRP for us Australians. So, yeah, a big conversation piece recently, with Xbox doing so well, or really trying to position itself as consumer friendly, is that the argument that competition will drive the best value for consumers. But I look at something like this, and smart delivery and all its huge benefits for gamers and for consumers in general hasn't seemed to pressure Sony at all in that regard. You think
No.
that
Mm.
that big move by Xbox would sort of persuade Sony to look at something similar or offer similar value to its customers. So yeah, do we see? I suppose they're being so successful that maybe it's never going to persuade them to do anything. But yeah, do you see them budging at all on any of these practices in the near future? Let's say in the next couple of years.
Not in the near future. I think it's again goes back to being the market leader and just thinking they've won this generation, and they're selling crazy well. Like, they're breaking their own insane records, and it's very similar to like the PS2 best-selling console of all time. And then they went into the PS3. Xbox had to go guns blazing. They launched the 360 early, had all types of problems, but they got sales and they did well. And Sony was fighting back all generation to claw back the market share because they just assumed they had it in the bag.
Mm.
And it's the last generation, the PS4 just dominates, and it's history repeating itself. Like, they don't need to be innovative, they don't need to be consumer friendly because they know they're going to sell millions, hundreds of millions of PS5s. Xbox had to do something to try to get more people in, to counter that. And that's, if Xbox were dominating, I don't think they would have brought in smart delivery either. Like, they didn't need to. Maybe they just care enough that they do want to do that. But that's definitely the driving factor. Like, the second place has to find a way to offer something that the first place isn't.
Mm.
And Sony just don't seem to care. Like, yeah, it doesn't really bother them.
You mentioned Nintendo, and it's almost becoming somewhat of an Apple model as well, right? Where they release this pen, the Apple
Yeah.
iPad pen. I don't know the names. I'm not don't have that technology in my house, but that is going to be $50 for a piece of plastic. Or there was like a stand as well. I can't remember what that stand was for. Also, that was just a ridiculous amount of money. Also, that Apple announced. But yeah, it's kind of to your point. They're market leader, and they're not seeing an impact in any sales of their consoles at the very least. And I don't think this is going to sort of impact the sales of Horizon either. The game is looking fantastic, so credit where credit's due. So the last question I had here was, do we think we see this continue with a lot of their other games into 2022? Things like God of War and GT7. Should we expect no upgrade path and collector's edition? For God of War most notably as well. That they're going to be the SKUs in the market that get you this dual entitlement. And sorry if you get standard edition, but you're gonna have to cough up some more money.
I would say now, absolutely. They don't have any plans to do it. But as you mentioned, like, there's no backlash at the moment. If it comes and it comes heavy, that's pretty much the only thing that will do it. Like, often we feel like we're powerless as consumers in this situation, and most of the time we are. Like, either you buy it if you want it or you don't, and they don't really care. But I think in this situation, if enough people complain enough that they get too much negative PR, I think they'll change it. Like it's not a, I can't see it making them that much more money. Like recouping costs, maybe they get a little bit more back, but who goes out and buys a 110 and $125 game that's the same game? You'd have to love it. Um, so I just, did you buy many games like going the last generation 360 to 1 and PS3 to PS4? Like there was no upgrade path for most of those games, or if they were like $20 or something to get both. But it was pretty uncommon. Like a lot of them didn't. Some did. Did you actually get both in a lot of that instance?
No, I mean, back then, I honestly, I'm just trying to remember what sort of games I was playing. I do remember like definitive editions, right? Like I think
Hmm.
Tomb Raider was one of the first ones to come out because they launched in early
Yeah.
2013, and they, I think, a year later shipped the definitive editions. Pardon me, on Xbox One and PS4 once those consoles had dropped, and then we saw things like The Last of Us remastered a year later, also on from PS3 to PS4. Yeah, I don't typically do upgrade pass. I think it's just the type of games I play that that don't really offer that.
Yeah.
I think the Xbox One launch I was sticking to things like Rise, Son of Rome, and Titanfall. So yeah, no need for upgrades there. Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with you, Ben. I think we'll see this from PlayStation for their next big few releases, and I think they're just gonna get away with it. It's probably like the wrong word to say here, but you assume that from 2023 onwards we're not going to have these cross gen games, but from first
True.
party at least as well, right? So there's not going to be this argument about how they do their upgrade pass because there won't be
Yeah.
any. So yeah, I think that we're gonna see this from them all throughout 2022, and then they're just going to sweep it under the rug because we don't have to worry about it anymore, and they would have gotten their money. But I think that I don't know. Yeah, I like your point around just like how much extra money could they be making. Obviously, they're across their books much more than we
Yeah.
are. But I almost wonder like, yeah, would the goodwill from offering a value proposition that closely resembles something from Xbox where it's a free upgrade path no matter where you buy, net them more sales in the long run? Are there people out there
Yeah.
who have decided just like, oh, okay, well then I'm just going to wait until I get a PS5. You're not going to get a PS4 version out of me. Whereas, maybe there's a chance for Sony to get their money now, and then just generate that goodwill that's going to definitely lock that person in for a PlayStation 5 sale down the line. So I think two ways to go about it, and they've obviously chosen this one. So yeah, I'm keen to see how it goes, and I think for the most part, as a lot of as it sort of happens a lot with the games industry, this will be forgotten next week once the news cycle refreshes
Yeah.
itself, and when they show gameplay of God of War, no one will be thinking about this anymore. So yeah,
Until it comes out, everyone's annoyed. But like looking back at last generation as an example, I don't think I played many either. Like I kind of feel like if you buy it on PS4, having that big price to buy it again, people are not going to do that. They're going to say, I've got a PS5, I've already played this old, this is an old cruddy PS4 game. I want to
mm,
play a new PS5 game. So they kind of shoot themselves in the foot with that. Like because these, especially these first party games from Sony, are so expensive now, and they don't depreciate like they did last generation, at least not yet. Um, People are like they're not going to buy that many games when they eventually get the console. So they're gonna, if you had that there as a free upgrade, people might say, "Oh yeah, I'll try it again. I'll play it again." They might end up buying DLC they didn't buy last time. Like it just seems like they're shooting themselves in the foot because I think, especially since it is backwards compatible, if you didn't finish it on PS4, you just continue that version. Like, why would you buy it again? I just don't get it.
yeah, no, it's a great point, and I think like I'd hope that you throw the PS4 disc into your PlayStation 5 without the that inherent upgrade, and the game runs better, right?
Hmm.
Like probably
Yeah,
like a lock 60 or something like that. So is there a great
yeah.
need to upgrade to the PS5? I guess we'll wait and see. Unless you want those dual sense features, maybe that are like just burnt into the PS5 disc instead. Anyway, like we've got some exciting PlayStation stuff to look forward to next week at the very least. Like I said, that PlayStation Showcase 6 a.m. Friday the 10th. But we will wrap it up there. Ben, I want to thank you so much for joining me for the question box. It's been a blast to see your face. 3 years on from our last
That's
meeting.
it. Yeah. Oh, it's been fantastic. Thanks for having me. I'm just trying to look on your shelf what you have in case you have like a Phil Spencer moment where you've hidden like a here's something amazing. You've got Xbox, you've
Yeah,
got the
no. So
Beatles box set.
yeah, no. Thanks for pointing out. I do have on my YouTube channel a rundown of
Yeah.
everything on my shelf. Though I've just refreshed it
Oh,
actually
nice.
because I've been painting this room. So
Mm.
I've thrown up like a couple of books and graphic novels there. That top shelf is all Halo books that I need to get to. And then on the left, on that second shelf at the bottom, I've got a Captain America. I've got Saga, a couple of volumes of Saga, the graphic novel, and some other books as well. But yeah, that is Mandalorian controller holder right there. And then that is an Xbox One controller signed by Phil Spencer, actually.
Oh, nice.
My Super
Mm.
Nintendo, a Siege stubby holder, and yeah, Master Chief, and a crocheted Groot from one of my best mates, Ben, actually up there as well.
Oh, so, very nice.
Yeah. Anyway, before we part though, Ben, tell them where they can find you, and feel free to plug anything and everything on Stevivor.
Yeah, well, you can find my most recent writing. I can't even remember what I did most recently, but it will be on Stevivor, whatever it is. You can listen to the Friendly Fire Show. We'll have you on, Shane. We will reciprocate that, and we
Oh,
love
I'd love
having
to.
guests.
Yeah.
Absolutely jump on. You can absolutely rage at Steve about whatever he's angry about. Basically, I was shocked you had him on for a Nintendo episode because he hates Nintendo. He'll
I don't
dispute
plan the
that.
topics. I just invite the guests and whatever the topics
yeah.
are. So it's all just timing.
Hates a harsh word. He doesn't understand. This is a man with like a million gamer score or whatever he's got, so he doesn't have time for any other platforms really. But yeah, that's where we are at the moment. So come and have a listen. We're on Spotify. That's where I find everything. So that's us.
Nice. I've just thrown the URL in chat. So yes, go check out Stevivor and listen to the Friendly Fire Show as you please. This has been the Question Box. You can catch us live here every Friday, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. That's twitch.tv/magic_cast. If you miss us live, don't fret. You can catch the VODs over on my YouTube channel. Just search Magic Cast into YouTube. Catch all our past episodes, including the one that featured Steve complaining about Nintendo as well. Follow me at Magic_Cast on Twitter. You can follow Ben_Salter on Twitter as well. We'll be back next week with reactions to the PlayStation Showcase. Very excited, and I'll also be probably live streaming the reactions here as well. A nice early 6 a.m. Thanks again to Ben, and we will catch you all next time.